I had some questions about my electric truck mount, specifically the pump, the vacuum system, and the little giant heater. I may not have all the specific answers on a couple things, but I'll do my best to try to answer the questions. The housing here is actually an aluminum fuel cell. I bought it from eBay many years ago for about $35. And really all I did was cut it to fit my needs. Obviously I cut one side off right here to have access. I cut two holes in the back for the vacuum motors. There's a hole here where the cords are running through, although that's not the original purpose of the hole. And these two holes are simply for some additional airflow. I have the vacuum motors mounted to the back of the box, which is where the hoses are also connected that run to the waste tank. Each one has a wire flex hose coming out for the exhaust, mainly so that it doesn't fill the box up with a lot of hot air and shorten the life of the vac motors. I use one cord for each vacuum motor, and for that I'm just using regular household type switches. Really, I think these things tend to hold up a little better than just toggle switches. I only installed this box when I put in the new PumpTech pump. This box only contains a rectifier. Originally I was using two vacuum motors and a PumpTech 1200 psi water otter, and at that time I would sit the water otter inside the vacuum box, and that's the reason I have this hole right here, because that's where the connection came out to go to the heater. And of course, since then I changed it up a little bit. I put a couple pieces of aluminum angle right here screwed on with a gap, just so I can slide a piece of expanded metal that I cut to kind of protect everything. The back of the vacuum box has the same 2-inch floor drains that I have right here on the waste tank, and they're connected the same way. I just have two screws running through the floor drain and attached to the vacuum box. You could be using any piece of metal or something like that and attach the vacs to one side and then attach something like these floor drains to the other side. Unless you're using something like the drum type system where you can mount the vacuums right on the top. But really that's all there is to the vacuum system. It's, like I said, it's pretty easy, straightforward, it's simple. There's just not a whole lot to it. As far as the amp draw, these vacuum motors pull a maximum of 13.1 amps per motor. When I got my gauge out and checked, they never pulled the maximum 13.1. As a matter of fact, I never seen them pull more than about 12 amps. And that was just at startup. The vac motors might pull the max amp draw right at startup, but they immediately go down. So whenever I checked, it usually was around 10 or 11 amps per vac motor. The pump is rated to pull a maximum of 3 amps, but I never seen it pull more than 2, even with it being cranked up all the way to 500 psi. So that means that one cord has a maximum amp draw of 13.1 amps, and one cord would have a max amp draw of 16.1. But again, neither one of them, including the one that has the pump and the vac motor on it, has ever pulled maximum amp draw when I checked. And there's been no problems with plugging in at customers' homes. I've never even blown a breaker. I bought this pump and an installation kit from a carpet cleaning supplier on eBay. And I bought it from them because they did have the installation kit available. Now, unfortunately, the installation kit is geared more towards retrofitting the pump into a portable extractor. So it meant that I had to kind of figure out more fittings that I was going to need to make it work for my application. And that's not hard to do. You just have to kind of sit down and look at the pump and figure out where you're going to need to put some 90s and which fittings you're going to need to reduce down and all that. So I'm not going to be a lot of help because I don't really remember which fittings I bought. It ended up taking me 2 trips to get everything that I needed. But the installation kit does come with a few fittings. It also comes with this clear hose. It comes with this filter. And I talked to PumpTech, and they highly recommend you use one of these filters if you're going to be hooking up directly to a water supply to keep your pump from cavitating. The installation kit also came with the pressure gauge, and it also came with the regulator. I do know that the back of the pump head has all 3/8 inch fittings, so I ended up having to just reduce a lot of those down to 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch to make it work for me. But again, I really don't remember which fittings I need, but it's really easy to figure out just what you're going to need to make this work. And just to be honest, I have not missed the bigger general pump that I was using yet. I'm still really happy with the 500 psi PumpTech. It's doing everything that I want it or need it to do. As far as the little giant heater and setting it up, it's really easy to set up also. Use some of the existing screws on the bottom of the heater and then just screwed it to the wood floor. I have 2 brackets on each side, and it's pretty sturdy. It doesn't move or anything like that, and that's how I've had it sitting for the last 8 years. And you would think even being on a wood floor, it may kind of waller out the holes, and it hadn't did that. And here's the fittings. Again, I set this heater up over 8 years ago, so I don't remember the fitting sizes, but there's just a standard propane line that runs along through here and out the front and to my propane bottles. I did add some extra tape on the propane line. I try to replace this every year or so, just so it doesn't get frayed and cause any problems. And one more thing that I did was I took a couple pieces of angle and cut them to the appropriate length, and I used U-bolts to hold that on, because previously the tank holder was further up, and I changed out the jack on my trailer. This jack will actually slide down when it's hooked up to the truck, and when I slide it down, I can open up my tailgate and it doesn't hit the jack. So I needed to be able to push this whole assembly back. The propane line is just a regular propane grill type line, but the regulator is a Little Giant regulator. Little Giant sets these at a specific setting. On the back of the propane heater, I installed a T, and I know it's 3/4 inch because it says it right here. And then I have my pressure relief valve, which again, if you're going to use a Little Giant propane heater, you really need to have a pressure relief valve so it doesn't bust your coils. So I have that on one side of the T, and on the bottom I have my quick connect where I connect the solution hose going to my wand. Coming off the pressure relief valve, you have your overflow, which I just drilled a hole into the floor of the trailer, and that way it can discharge if the pressure relief valve opens. And really there's not a whole lot more to the propane heater than that. It's flow fired, so there's not a whole lot of things that can go wrong with it. The only issue I've ever had has been the thermocouple, which I replaced one time. The strikers on these things, they're kind of hit or miss. Mine works, although I still prefer to use a barbecue lighter to light it because it's just quicker. The only maintenance that I've ever done other than changing out the thermocouple was I cleaned my burner ring one time. Those 2 screws right there you can take out, and you can unscrew this right here, and you can pull this, which is hooked to the burner ring, completely out of the heater, and you can turn it upside down and bang out any of the crud in there and use a tip cleaner to clean your jets. But that's all I've done. I don't run any chemicals through the heater. I only use a freshwater rinse, so I've never had to descale it. And there may be a little buildup just from, you know, deposits in the water over the years, but I'm not really noticing any decrease in heat, so I don't think it needs to be descaled. But other than that, I believe that's the only real maintenance items that you might have to deal with. Descaling it, changing out your thermostat assembly if it goes bad, cleaning your burner ring. I also had some questions about using lower pressure pumps. I've used both the SureFlow 100 PSI and the SureFlow 150 PSI pumps over the years, and I'm not a fan of those at all. Even the 150 PSI, the volume of water that it flows is very, very low. And given the choice between using, say, 150 PSI SureFlow pump or just tap pressure, I would take tap pressure any day. Because while the tap pressure doesn't have a lot of pressure behind it, it'll flow a decent amount of water if you have the appropriate size jet on your wand. Now, the people that I talk to that use the Aquatech 220 PSI, they seem to say it does pretty good. So if I was personally looking for a smaller pump to use, I would go with the Aquatech 220. I hope that answers some of the questions that people had. I know I wasn't super helpful like with the fitting sizes on the pumps, but I don't remember. And it's been a couple months since I've put the pump together, so I really don't remember what sizes they are. But again, it's super easy to figure it out. But if you have any more questions, put them in the comments, and I will try to do my best to answer them. All right, well, I appreciate you watching. I hope this was helpful to those of you that had questions, and I'll see you in the next video.